it's rare that you tweet out that you don't feel well and you're not feeling up to it, or hey, I have a cold. Why do you not do that?
I have not gotten an answer for this even myself. Like I've been trying to find like the one sentence that would really distill it. I mean, the honest to goodness truth is that I am sympathetic when I see that tweet from other people, but if I see it often, I'm just kind of like I'd stop caring a little bit at least. Like so I would be very, for me it's like having like a nuclear option. Like imagine, you had like a bug out bag in your closet that had like a can of soup in it. You might get hungry before the earthquake happens, but you don't really want to eat the can of soup, for a number of reasons. But that's kind of like your emergency, or it's like dipping into like an emergency fund for something like that to buy something frivolous. Like you want to make sure like you're seriously using it. Because I really think you do get diminishing returns, but between like, okay, like that's why I think it carries more weight, because like you or I almost never take like an unscheduled day off. We almost never throw an audible where we're like, oh, we're supposed to be live. It's half an hour into the show and he hasn't even said anything. He hasn't said he's not going to be live. He hasn't said he's going to be late. So like, because we don't do that, when we tweet like, hey, I can't do the show today, something came up mentally, medically, whatever, right? People take it more seriously. Otherwise, I think if you deploy that over and over again, people are just kind of like, I'm the sad guy. And then and this is my own personal insecurity.
Yeah.
You soak up sympathy. I'm not saying people are doing it for sympathy, but I do think the percentage of people, whether that's 10% or like 90%, are like, well, I follow you not to be rude. Like I'm not wishing that you're gonna suffer and be in misery, but at the same time, like I follow you for entertainment. And if you start to dial back on the entertainment factor consistently, I think they start to tune out. So that's one. And the other thing is like some days, like I told you off camera, I'm dealing with some stuff today. Like my whole routine was upended today by something that's not really like a crisis, but required urgent attention. So I was like, man, I really could take today off. I have a great excuse, but I was like, I don't want to, because I feel like anytime I've done that in the past, by the time the day is over, I'm like, man, I really wish I had actually just stuck to my routine, not fallen behind by like another couple of days, and like I feel good doing it as well. So I think that having a motivation to constantly like keep hitting that rhythm is useful.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to what you said, but my take on it, I'm going to be a little bit, I'm not going to say more honest, because that's implying you're not honest, but I'm going to, like, this is probably one area where I feel extremely strong about, and you hit on it, and I think you hit it in a very tactful way, but when people complain a lot, whether it's on Twitter or in real life, to me, it's the same thing. It's similar, but I'm like you. I tune out, but I tune out very fast, because when I see that stuff, I'm just very grateful for everything. And to me, like, if we're in this industry, it doesn't get any better than this. And so to focus on little stuff and saying like, oh, I'm sick or whatever, I understand when people are sick, but it's kind of like what you said, but for me on steroids. If I see that, like, I'm just going to be honest. And it's probably one of the areas I need to work on, because I'm really strong in not being judgmental, meaning that you want to do whatever you want to do, go do it. But when I see that, and I see like a stream of like every fourth day, it's like I'm sick, da-da-da. And I'm not saying like someone who's chronically sick or things like that. It's going to come across harsh, but I think it's like soft. It's like you have this opportunity and like you have the sniffles or whatever. I don't know. That's my take on it. I know we're probably at different ends of the spectrum on that, but soft in the way where it's like there's this moment and here's an opportunity. And maybe soft isn't the best word, but in terms of like a gauge of needle of how bad do you want it, it's probably not as bad as you think you want it. But also I know like to try to be self-aware too. I know I've been raised in an environment and had a lot of experiences, in particularly in athletics, whether coaching, where it's like that kind of, I don't want to say got beat out of me, but through observing my environment, it's like, man, you're capable of doing a lot if you don't beat yourself. And that's why I think it's interesting. Where I'm intrigued by you is that, and we haven't talked about our backgrounds a ton, but you kind of have that mindset without, from my, I know where I learned it from. I learned it from like really being heavily involved in football, where it's like there's no excuses. You either do it or you don't. But so I don't want what I say to come off as harsh. I just look at it as the inverse. It's like, if I'm taking a day off, it better be like Mayday City 101, because that's how serious I take this stuff. I assume that everyone wants it as bad as like I do, or is motivated. And I think that's where, to me, where I'm take a step back and be a little bit self-aware and be like, okay, look, people have varying degrees of what they're capable of doing and what they want to do. But at the same time, I do realize there's things you can do, like within the realm of being self-aware, that you can do this. Like, do I think I could do this full time? Yeah. Do I think it's going to take another 5-6 years? Yeah. But I don't know. And so that's where I get a little bit, I think we're different. And it's not that I don't have sympathy, but that just, for whatever reason, that's like an issue of mine. And I don't have an answer as to why or how I think like that, but that's just how I feel, man. I
don't think we're as far off as you might think we are. I think we share a lot of that philosophy, but maybe with different wording is the way that I would think about it. Not to say that anything you said was necessarily over the line, but like I do think that's part of it. Is like every single day that we do this, I still want it. Like, and you've talked, and we've both talked before about like iron sharpening iron.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like I'll admit, I go on TikTok and I look at Dan and I'm like, oh, his last video killed it. And maybe like earlier that day, I was like, I don't really want to like put in the time to make it. But I'm like, crap, his video crushed it. He's like, in my head, I'm like, he's pulling ahead a little bit here. So I'm going to like put in a little extra time to try to like catch up as well. And you can easily frame that in a negative way. Like, oh, you're like working yourself to death. You're not taking like free time for yourself. But I think for one, I've been doing this for like 8 or 9 years and have never gotten burnout. Maybe symptoms of burnout. But what it's come down to is like, I really just realize like I get energized by the work. Like for me, a perfect day is not like, and we're lucky. We're coming at this from like an incredible position of like, we have a job where we play video games every day for our job, which is just amazing. And people will like literally, people will give you money and then go, you saved my life. It's like you get it on the, first off, the duties of the job are fun and not like backbreaking, but then secondarily, you're constantly getting feedback from people that is like, you're amazing, you're awesome. It's really like, it's a potent cocktail to make doing the job pretty easy and addictive. But I really like, a perfect day for me is not like a day where I sit on the couch and like, oh, I get to like watch a whole season of a TV show or something like that. It's really like a balanced day where I like wake up, do a little exercise, do like my normal work day, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. And then I like eat a nice meal and spend some time with my wife. Like it's a balanced day like that. That really like hits all the notes for me right now. So I think that's, I do agree with you that I think that there's two kinds of people and you can tell who's who. People that enjoy doing the job, and I think they feel a little bad about taking time off. Not that people on the other side don't, and then there's people that they see it as kind of draining, or they see it as a chore. They see it as something that they have to do just to tick a box in order to, make ends meet. And I think that's where more of that stuff comes in, where you're like, it becomes a lot easier to skip a day if you don't actually enjoy it, I guess.
Yeah. And you said something that kind of like, I don't want to say it didn't, trigger's not the right word, but when you said like, for you, your perfect day isn't like sitting around and on the couch and watching like a full season of whatever Breaking Bad. And there's times when, not times, but sometimes like I wish I could do that. Like I understand, and really I think it's cool that people can do that and truly enjoy it. But to me, like I can't. I find it's hard to derive enjoyment from that. Like I'll like to watch an episode and maybe every now and then like watch a couple, but there's sometimes when I'm like, man, I wish I could enjoy that. But it's not. But the inverse is, I think it's because it's not that I don't enjoy that. I just enjoy doing this so much more, and like, creating content and kind of like the feedback loop. How did this do? Did it do well? Getting kind emails and texts, and I don't know, and I think it's almost like people will probably hear us talk like this and be like, man, I'm glad I'm not like that. I'm glad I can relax. And so I don't know. And I think to me, that's like the one area where being self-aware and trying to like, not self-analyze, but say, all right, like I know I need to increase empathy in these areas. And that is one of the things. Is sometimes like I'll see one of those tweets, like I'm taking a day off, and my mind will immediately go, they don't want it. And it's like, instead of that, it's like, okay, hey, look, I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know their desire. Maybe they want to do it part-time. Maybe they're at a point when they're thinking about quitting and they don't like it. So I've always found, like, to me, the answer is, and this even sounds weird, but just worry about yourself.
I'm definitely not encouraging people to work themselves to death 100%. I always try to put in perspective, like on average, I probably work like a 50, 55, 60 hour work week. And that's more than average, but I'm not sure if it's more than average for like someone who quote unquote owns a business, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Like that's a lot of work for sure. But also I have the privilege of, every hour I put in gives me something directly back. The less time I invest, the less I get. The more time I invest, the more I get back. So that's like, 8 to 9 hours a day, sometimes 10, like on a Thursday, for example. And then I get one dedicated day off that like completely rejuvenates me and feels like exactly the right amount of time to get me like, hey, like just when boredom just starts, that's when like my day off ends and I'm rejuvenated to go back into my work week. Plus we have no commute again. So that's like for some people that could save 90 minutes or 120 minutes every day. So I really don't feel like even us, if we're really grinding, I'm always like, I don't feel like I'm working that hard compared to like, somebody who works a blue collar job, or even like my parents when I was growing up. Like we have a pretty cushy job. I'm not saying you should never complain, but complaining about the amount of work has always seemed very bizarre to me in a job where you can choose your own hours and the duties are leisure to begin with.
Well, see, I'm different. I'm in a hard line. I don't think you should. Okay. I don't think you should ever complain, because you want to know why? No one cares. No one, and this is good. I don't care. This is how if you complain, who cares? Your wife cares, and my wife cares. No one else cares. They may say, "Oh, sorry, you have the sniffles, Ryan," and I'm sure there is some empathy. But do they really care? No, they don't. Because you want to know why? Because they want you to be you. They want you to put out the videos. That's what and I say that tongue in cheek, right? There are people, that care about you, and to varying degrees, right? But the flip side is, this is really the crux of the conversation, is that you spend 10 minutes complaining.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, what did you do with those 10 minutes? What did you solve? And this is preachy. I don't care. What did you do in 10 minutes of complaining? Okay. What could you have done in those 10 minutes complaining? Probably fix whatever you're upset about. I don't know. I just complaining. And this is, to me, if I see myself going down that road, I'm like, stop. Because if you're complaining, one, can you do anything about it? If yes, just do that. If no, there's nothing you can do about it anyways. So they both lead to stop.
I guess what I would say is I hold myself to a different standard. When I see people venting and complaining on Twitter, I'm like, do what you got to do. When I think about doing it myself, and I have done it in the past, but I'm doing it less and less, and hopefully zero moving forward. When I think about doing it, I'm like, I don't want to do that, because I agree with you. Like I said, today we had like an urgent situation pop up, and I was like, I could delay my whole workday and have a great excuse, and I would get a lot of likes. If I started talking about what happened, people would be like, that's absurd. Take all the time you need, blah, blah, blah. But for me, if I really honestly audit it and look at how I feel, Like if I look at how I feel at like 10 p.m. tonight, I know I will feel better having done the work and like say compartmentalize, which is a bad word in psychology for sure, but compartmentalize, the personal stuff that's happening, deal with that when I have the time to deal with that, and also make sure the professional stuff is still working, because that's honestly where I derive like a lot of my like calm and like relaxation from, is like all the stuff that has to be done is done. I've knocked out, I've knocked out the rent, I've knocked out the utilities. There's nothing hanging over my head. Now I have like that cognitive space to deal with whatever's happening in other parts of my life. And I agree, like sometimes it would feel good temporarily to complain about it on social media, and there's a case to do so, but I don't know if it really serves me in the end to do that. But I do think it might depend on the kind of person that you are. Maybe there's people out there that derive strength from talking about problems, whether they're petty or they're major, and they can use that as a position to inspire themselves and encourage themselves to get out of a rut. But I do think that, and if we're both going to go down the boomer path, I think that the boomer take that I have is that sometimes you can get into a cycle of like, oh, when I complained on Twitter, I got a lot of attention and that felt good. So now that's like, it becomes addictive. And anytime you feel bad, you can be like, this is what's making me feel bad, and get a quick hit of like other people's gratification basically. And you can kind of get, I don't want to say addicted, but you can start to enjoy that and create a pattern that I think doesn't serve you professionally, for sure. So I think in what I do, I embody what you're talking about, but in terms of like the sympathy that I have for other people and the empathy that I have for people that are complaining, it's a little greater, but also still not as much as a lot of people, for sure. I'll admit.
It's because I used to be like, man, don't ever complain about anything. But what I found is like, I'll vent sometimes, but I'll vent to like basically the people in this circle, like,
yeah,
and like they listen, but it's also like it helps kind of, because no one's perfect, right? There's stuff that you're upset about, but I've noticed like when I do that, like that helps, and then you get it out and you move on. Or like if I'm really worked up, I'll do something like physical, because it's not like I'm never upset about stuff, but like I'll run or whatever, like I'll do something to get it out, because I found for myself, if I don't get it out, then it's been way more helpful to get that stuff out. I think for me though, it just matters the venue or platform which you get it out, right? I'm just to kind of wrap things up, I'm so grateful, and I understand what you said. It's a cushy job. It's amazingly fun. It's rewarding. You're ultimately in control, and the compensation arguably, maybe not even arguably, doesn't feel like it's fair. You know what I mean? Like you get overcompensated for doing what you do. But so I just take that, and it's like, how could you complain about that? Now with like real life complaints and stuff like that, that's not what I was referring to. I think more so just in our lane of what we do.